Hey y'all, they're virtual mechanic, wait, rafters. Wait, what game am I playing again? Something about this looks right but doesn't. Why is everything so familiar and yet so odd at the same time? Well, that's because this may be one of the most awesome mods ever! Welcome to Raft Mechanic, a mashup of two of the Axolotl games, Raft and Scrap Mechanic. Both regularly are featured on this channel because both are so awesome to play. This just multiplied the awesome by cramming them both together. It primarily works in survival mode as an addition, but it doesn't actually alter the creative mode map into an ocean, but yet you can still play with most of the mod parts that will be in your crafting inventory. So if you feel like building a test draft here, that's totally possible, and I'll put the link for the Steam Workshop download down in the description. It also includes the installation instructions that are only just a few simple steps. You won't find out how different or how hectic Raft Mechanic is until you load up into survival mode and find yourself floating on a small, pre-constructed vessel with a bed and the familiar research table modeled after the one in Raft. It has now become basically a Craftbot stand-in for rafting essentials, and if you're wondering if that's all, nope. We totally get the larger Craftbot and other accessories per normal Scrap Mechanic gaming. So you will be able to craft some high-tech rafts. In this video, I'll be covering the ways in which Raft Mechanic altered the game, the new items that are involved and why they're important, as well as previewing the routes involved in getting to the first 3 story locations. For now, the research table workbench is where we find our tools and other necessary items. To get started, we want to craft a hammer. Since we're stuck out here in a stationary mode until we have some kind of sail or engine, it's time to go for a swim to pick up some plastic and wood debris that's floating all around us. For any of you that are familiar with the 2 games already, you basically might notice that the world of Scrap Mechanic is now flooded, but otherwise you can see broken down buildings on those distant islands. The underwater landscape hasn't changed much, except for the abundance of rock formations like the ones that used to be above ground in normal survival mode, but you won't need to build a drill this time. The pickaxe-like tool found in the research table takes it down in about the same fashion as a tree. The metal blocks are not immediately needed, unless you want to craft some convenient reinforced raft foundations to keep the shark from being much of a hassle. The clams and crude oil remain, and I'm guessing that we'll need plenty of those things. It's not too pertinent to get to right away, but the chemical plant islands have also survived the flooding of the map, so it won't be hard to come by or make plenty of that plastic that we're going to need for raft foundations. So let's focus on the essentials, as that hunger and thirst meter is already starting to tick away. We're on the clock. The Rafters version of Scrap Mechanic Hammer doesn't have quite the function that it used to. It's for smashing sharks, bots, clams, boxes, and other assorted items, but for trees, you'll now have to craft a saw blade at the end of the pole. In other words, an axe. Might as well delay that until you reach your first island. In order to do that, we have to get the raft to move first. And in lieu of having a paddle, the hammer is the thing that you use, smacking the raft to make it move. But it's a little tricky. It'll get you there. Occasionally having to chase the shark bot away when you might notice it bumping onto your raft, as it can do a little bit of damage, eventually causing pieces to break. I found this out the hard way, but I should have known already from the raft game formula. I recommend that among the first islands you visit is the Space Ranger's Outpost thing. That can be found by selecting the beacon in your logbook. This is very unique mod comes complete with a quest line and custom locations. In the process of getting there, it might be a good idea to start collecting the resources needed to craft both the drinking water purifier and the grill. The purifier works in two ways, either by the water bottles, which can be found floating around the water, or by using a crafted bucket to scoop up the water. It will return the bucket when you pick up the final water product, and the grill is just a one recipe function, turning fish into cooked fillets that will provide you more back to your hunger bar but won't deplete your thirst, which is a side effect of consuming the fish when raw. And where do you get this fish? Why, from fishing, of course, but Scrap Mechanic doesn't have fishing, you say. Well, but this super clever mod maker put fishing into the game. We can make a pole from the research table, and when equipped into the action bar near water, left click and hold to cast a distance. You wait for the splashes. They're these little ones, series of little ones, and then a bigger one. Wait for that big splash to click, and you could get back anything on a huge loot table. But it will mostly be fish for grilling. This can keep us well nourished while collecting all that's needed to get the farm up and going, but fishing can be a fantastic pastime given the amount of stuff that could be fished up off the loot table, including component kits. The first part of the story zone has elements of the original Scrap Mechanic station and is essentially the same function as being a Craftbot factory. It just doesn't quite look the same. The taller structure building has the small Craftbot mounted on the wall. It has the usual inventory plus the raft workbench so that you can have multiple or replace the one that the shark might eat. To activate it, it just requires the battery, which is right next door in the 3-cylinder dormitory spaces. If this is deja vu, it's because it's the same place you'd find the battery when starting up on original survival mode. The Heybots found in the area do respawn, so be sure to store your loot safely away from their locations. It's still easy to use as a temporary base until the raft can be built up, as there's plenty of islands around to collect materials from. I am unsure at this point if there will be islands of multiple biomes because we haven't made it that far yet. This survival mode can actually be a heckin' challenge in solo. Trustworthy has a super busy schedule lately, so I had to do the bulk of the gathering myself. Getting run down by 4 Heybots at once, and I wasn't ready for that. Even the water isn't safe. I could escape the Heybots, but there'll just be a shark bot lurking in the water, and it hits for a substantial amount of health. My bag ran down the hill into the waters after dying, and I struggled to retrieve my inventory as the shark bot taunted me. I think it's going to be a good balance, though. I just had no clue what I was doing when I got started. That's why I decided to put this little guide together. Plus, mods are a massive part of maximizing the fun that can be had with Scrap Mechanic. Different island types range from open landscape to busy with activity so far. Rundown buildings remain for us to kill robots and loot. Usually there's some trees around to harvest, and other islands offer features such as chemical ponds or wreckage that appears to be custom. It doesn't look that familiar to the original game. The only island I've found so far with flax, flowers, and cotton has been the initial story beacon mechanic station, but the custom raft mod menu has, among many other interesting items, an apiary, plus bees to go with them. The limited cotton plants seem to provide tons of seeds when picking, so I don't think obtaining materials will be too tough. Which brings me to talking about the farming changes in Raft Mechanic's mod. It's similar to Scrap Mechanic in most ways, aside from the special planters that have been provided by the mod. The most notable is meant for trees. Seeds, cones, and acorns will drop at the same time timbers do while cutting trees. I had to load up in creative mode to craft a little model to preview these and some other additions from the Raft Mechanic mod. New planters come in a variety of small, medium, and large. The last is suitable for farming wood and can grow 4 different kinds of trees. These small and medium planters replace the rest of your crops and the normally abundant pigment flowers. Soil is used in crafting in the planters, but can also be used as normal out on regular land. And as it says, right there in the tooltip, that this doesn't cause raids. Whew! That would be a little much, having a bunch of bots overrunning this tiny little raft. Might as well utilize the Space Ranger Outpost and its convenient positioning between several islands and plenty of those materials to get started working on the raft that can carry you a distance. Once leaving this island, it's difficult to return as you'll be having to work against the current. After powering up the station, your logbook will update. It's a rescue mission to the old crash site where players spawn in Scrap Mechanic's regular survival mode, and it's going to start us off down a lot of sailing explorations. I found this out after the first stop in the quest and had to return back for the large Craftbot, assuming that I'm probably going to need it, and I don't know when there will be another mechanic station. So I recommend packing along as much as possible. If you're going to reinforce that raft, you're good to make some small chests and pack them along with as much stuff as you can hold. The logbook's next entry instructs us to build an antenna, since the one at the outpost has already been too badly damaged to function. Probably from that pesky Heybot that was hanging out up in the rafters. This is a craftable that's found within your research table, and once finished, your logbook will update once again. If you happen to catch the chat box at the same time, you'll see that the sail and windsock have finally been unlocked. Now we'll be able to move using the wind rather than smacking stuff wildly with a hammer in sporadic directions. When you're ready with your new raft base, carry it on over to the water line and drop it in the water. Use the hammer if necessary to get it out there. Once adrift, install several of the sails. One will move a plastic raft fairly efficiently, but if you're on the reinforced variety with gear on board, 2 or 3 sails will get you going much quicker. Making a windsock from the table and installing it on the deck will help you tell which direction the wind is blowing to help make the most that you can steer the craft by moving the sails around a bit. All the sails on one side will drive the ship in the immediate direction in the wind is blowing, but you can also position them into a corner to slow the raft or keep it moving slightly adrift of the wind's direction. It gives plenty of time to gather more materials or fish. There's a hook launcher in the research table menu that can be shot towards a pile of floating debris by holding the left click button. Right click then reels the hook back in, bringing the trash towards the raft for collecting, similar to your regular trash hook and raft. If you haven't already, open the logbook for the updated quest line and set the waypoint. Adjust the sails and then enjoy what transitions into some very raft-like gameplay. Plenty of time to fish, grab trash off the water, or run to the purifier every few minutes to stockpile more drinking water, or get that grill fired up. We're on our way to story location 2, which is found underwater and is the original crash site from the game, but with a few alterations. We're ready to jump down into that water and explore what's left of the spaceship. You just keep swimming around the side until you see what looks like a boarded up opening, then smash it with your hammer to get inside. But look out around the corner for a couple of bots that made home in the control room. Activate the exclamation point quest marker to update your logbook and then head to the surface because you'll probably need air soon. And if you haven't already discovered the flippers in the research table, those are a considerable speed increase while you're in the water, fast enough to outswim the shark bots, so I highly recommend as soon as you have extra material for those. Back on the raft, it gives us a breather and a chance to look through the logbook for what's next, and now we know exactly who we're looking for. This one isn't going to be a surprise for most. It's the trader. He's landed here under distress circumstances and has taken off for the hills, off on an island down current. I made sailing pretty smooth for myself by starting off with the reinforced foundations. It's been pretty uneventful, but does give me some time to enjoy the gameplay without sharkbot management otherwise bumping my boat every few minutes. It would probably result in a lot of plastic cartage. I'm not risking the Craftbot after having to backtrack to the Outpost for it, but it does give me a chance to do an expansion on the raft. A few more rows and it's probably time to start building up. Literally. Get in at least a second floor landing to stack more gear. Where we're going next is the perfect place to farm up wood to do it because the island which houses the trader is quite large and densely packed with gatherables. It's where you start seeing some wildlife, rather, the walks. There's one here to greet us on the island when we're docking on the beach. On the way here, you may have also spotted a packing station in the distance, along with the other warehouses. You know what this means? It means we're probably doing a lot of the same activities that we did in Scrap Mechanic, but now we're doing it raft style. We won't be needing to rebuild the semi-truck this time, maybe more of a barge, but large islands are still an excuse to build a good survival vehicle. Maybe make a nice little garage on the raft for it. I'm really loving this remix of the two games. The best elements of both are in this mod, and I haven't played as much Scrap Mechanic lately, but this has totally convinced me to hit that play button when I have free time. It gives new life to the activities that already existed in a way that almost makes this a whole new thing. I believe it's Dr. Pixel Plays heading up this effort. Check out their channel, they make awesome videos, and I'll link that up in the corner. It's not too difficult finding the trader by the usual signs with "Keep Out" written on them. A familiar sight, this half-circle metal warehouse with the vacuum for fruits and vegetables located right next to it. Just a quick introduction with him and your logbook will update to let you know what his requests are. And if you've guessed that it involves farming, then you are correct. The quest has a button to mark the waypoint for the packing plant location. Likely the one you already saw when you were adrift onto the Trader's Island, but with this quest completion, you won't just have to drift anymore, as propellers have been unlocked in the research table crafting menu. You know what this means? It's time to make an engine and steering controls because we can finally get into the elements that allow for a ton of creative problem solving. So by now, I'm happy that I went back for the Craftbot. I couldn't leave the helpful buddy behind, it has all these wonderful parts in it. But it's probably worth returning to the Space Ranger's Outpost for an automatic refiner and resource collector. Refining wood by hand can get rather tedious. I'm gonna have to build up something such as a crane to get the resource collector to the bottom of the ocean back to the surface for all that metal. But I've got a lot of farming to do for the trader, so it's time to expand this raft deck to make space for more planters and for Trustworthy to hang out. Hopefully he'll be back soon. Well, and it's back to the grind for me, and I hope we see y'all back for more Raft Mechanic. Take care, y'all, and bye-bye!